So, this is a rather short story and happened a while ago, so my memories are blurry on some parts. Also, English is not my first language. At the time, I was 17 and joined a small Halloween one-shot with one of my players. I was playing a wizard, and the problem player was a fighter, who was at least 20, if I remember correctly. There were more people, but not relevant. We first needed to get the quest from one of the NPCs, so we made our way to the guy and talked to him. Now, the fighter wanted to roleplay it out, wanting to get every kind of information and plan far into the future of the one-shot and the problem at hand, how we can inform the governor of the problem, etc., 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 which would have been okay if it wouldn't have taken 3 hours. You know, some people play D&D to have epic, incredible, fantasy adventures where you're a decisive hero. And others play it for a yapping simulator. You know, no judgments, I guess. It was 3 hours of mostly him talking to the NPC. I tried to get us to move on, but no avail. The DM, if I remember correctly, didn't say anything. We finished the rest of the quest, and on another date, the fighter continuously tried to hit on my player character, later proclaiming her as his future girlfriend, and then calling me his D&D girlfriend. He already had a fiancé.
Hi, my name is Melissa, and this is my boyfriend.
Hi.
And this is my boyfriend's girlfriend.
Wait, I didn't want to be his girlfriend. I just played D&D with the guy. I didn't
Scale of 1 to 10.
You are a natural 20.
I didn't consent to any of this. Okay, I didn't want. Don't worry.
Wait,
I didn't consent either.
wait, I didn't.
Get me out of here. Please, get me out of here!
I blocked him a while ago because he wouldn't stop being a creep and happily waddled on with my life. Waddled on with my life. I'm stealing that now, thank you. Look, being someone's D&D girlfriend is bad enough. But being with someone who can yap about their plan for 3 hours, yeah, I think that's a fate worse than death. Kate was a friend of a friend with a passion for stories, which eventually becomes an issue, sadly, and a sassy type of humor, another eventual issue. When I asked her to join my first ever campaign, she was hesitantly curious, but gave it a shot. I don't want this to be super long, so time for a list format. Number 1. She played a rogue. The class itself is not a problem, certainly, but the way she wielded it certainly was something. She never really understood how sneak attack worked her entire tenure with the group, even after having it explained to her by the whole group, literally dozens of times. We even made a chart for her to look at, which went unused.
Okay, let's try this again. As long as you're using your normal rogue weapons, you gain sneak attack when you have advantage on the attack roll. You gain sneak attack if you have an ally within 5 feet, and you lose sneak attack if you have disadvantage in any way for whatever reason. Do you get it? Please just repeat this back to me. You gain sneak attack when you have advantage. You gain sneak attack when there's an ally within 5 feet. And I have to make a sneak attack when the enemy can't see me. No! That contradicts what I literally just said! How is that even possible?
I just don't get it.
Oh
you never explained these things to me.
We've done
Alright,
this
I
12
don't get it.
times.
This is too complicated.
Dude.
Alright? Can I play a wizard or a druid? Those are really simple classes. Easy to understand. In fact, the only rogue feature Kat made use of was cunning action, but in the most illogical ways. She used the hide option once in our 3rd session and then just never again. She would shoot enemies with her short bow and then try to disengage from them so they won't try to hit her from 60 feet away. Bro, that's every Hawkeye in Marvel Rivals. Every time they take 1 point of damage, gotta run! It took a year for Kate to understand that disengage didn't make people you shoot forget you exist, even after we all explained it to her and told her that the hide action would actually help her with what she was trying to do. And if she didn't hit anything, she would instead dash to run in circles so she didn't waste her bonus action. Alright, I do that too. Kate tried to explain Thieves' Cant to every single NPC she met for 3 months, even after being told that it was like a secret language, and that actual crooks wouldn't like her babbling their secret code to random strangers around town. She didn't stop until the party got sick and demanded mid-session that she just never use this damn language again. As a new player, of course, you're going to have questions about how things work and what certain creatures or player characters can do. That is fine, and even encouraged, because it shows you have interest in the mechanics and lore of the D&D setting. Kate's questions, however, were rarely ever relevant to anything. As an example, when I started up my second campaign, I sat down with her to try and figure out what subclass of warlock she wanted to play. Or I tried to, as she put it off for 3 whole weeks. When I told her she had to decide before the game started, just 2 weeks later, she said she had a single question before she chose. How many squirrels are there in this world? Yes, she wanted the exact precise number of living squirrels in the setting in order to decide what patron her warlock had. She never explained why this question was important. Alright, you know what to do.
Get in the comments!
I need an explanation for this. My brain can't handle the question. Remember how I said Kate had a passion for stories? Turns out she wanted an experience more similar to watching a play than playing D&D. She wouldn't ever have anything to contribute to the plot or the party plans, especially if the current arc significantly involved her player character. She would sit silently hearing the game out being told to her, drastically slowing the pace and destroying any sense of dramatic tension. When Kate did have something to add, it was one of 3 things: a cringy Whedonism, a comment about IRL or in-game food, or my player stands there being pretty and sassy. These are the things that comprise the majority of her dialogue, to the point where the word sassy had to be banned from the table. Let's circle back to mechanical deficiencies. During my 3rd campaign, which was run by another player, she started out as a life cleric. Given her skill level with the rogue, I was worried, and I was unfortunately right to be. She did not use spell slots unless we demanded her to do so, even to heal. Her primary tactic of combat was to attack with a sickle, using her strength score of 8. That's right, Kate chose to play a cleric subclass with heavy armor access, but couldn't get heavy armor because she wanted low strength, but chose to attack with the strength weapon anyway.
I fear that today I must take up my blade once more. Ugh. Fuck.
My player character, a rogue, gave her one of his daggers so she could use the much better 14 dex to actually be useful, and she never used it. Expanding on that last player character, the now DM and I convinced her to switch her class to rogue, as at least she understood it better than cleric. Once she did so, she no longer wanted to attack unless an enemy just ran up to her. Instead, Kate now wanted to focus on healing, whether it be with the custom subclass DM and I built for her, or with a once-a-day magic item the DM made for her, or any of the potions we happen to have. She did this even after I switched to playing a healing bard, so we didn't have 2 rogues in the group unnecessarily. Oh my god, make it make sense! Even with all this, Kate was our friend, and we wanted to spend time with her. Some of us had hoped she would just get good at the game, and we were just happy that she showed up. Then her IRL problem started. I won't get into it because it's not my story to tell, but she eventually started showing up later and later, oftentimes with little to no warning. Hell, for the last year, even when she showed up, she spent half the session just muted. We used Roll20 in Discord, and sometimes she was just straight up asleep during our games. As you can imagine, it just killed the verisimilitude. Why do you guys do this to me? What does that word even mean? Ding! The dynamic was killed. The last straw was a few months ago when she texted us saying she was leaving to the grocery store and she'd be 10 minutes late. 10 minutes before the session started. An hour and a half later, after calling and texting her with no answer and resorting to playing Pictionary for 20 minutes, we decided just to call it a night. 5 minutes later, we got a message saying, "Sorry, I just got home." That was it. I called everyone else, got consensus, and drafted up a Dear John letter we could all approve of. I sent it to her saying that there's no hard feelings and that we still want to be friends, and we were really excited to have her at IRL gatherings that we would be attending soon. We haven't heard from her since, and while the flow of the game has improved, there's an air of sadness that permeates around each session. Kate, if you're reading this, we miss you so much. Even if you don't come back to the game, we all wish you'd send us a text once in a while. You're still our friend, and we hope things are going well for you. I just want to add a few things before signing off. If it wasn't clear at any point, we didn't boot Kate because she's our friend, and we didn't want to hurt her or ourselves, which I guess we failed on both counts. Also, the kick didn't come out of nowhere. She was fully aware of these criticisms we had of her this whole time. As the person who put the group together and the person who DMs most often, I take it upon myself to communicate any grievances the group might have and try to talk over solutions. And unfortunately, that doesn't work all the time. Look, someone can be a god-awful D&D player and still be a great friend. I'd go as far as to say that the vast majority of my friends would not enjoy D&D, and I would not enjoy DMing for them. That doesn't mean we can't still be besties, because it's just a game at the end of the day. What Kate is doing is certainly not the worst thing we've ever read about. I mean, she's not some horrible incel, but at the same time, it is really annoying to play with somebody who habitually ignores the rules constantly and slows down the pace of the game, especially if you try to give them feedback and they just ignore it. Yeah, I know I said it's just a game, and that's true, but it's a lot easier to have fun with the game when the game is good. And when somebody's dragging it down like that, it's a problem, especially if they don't listen to feedback at all. Though she may not be the best at D&D, I'm sure she's still an awesome friend, and I genuinely hope she reconnects with you guys. Hey Crispy, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Love your videos, and although this isn't really a horror story, truly, I'm scared of it becoming one soon, and of course, I'm also scared I'm becoming the problem player. Mandatory English isn't my first language, apologies in advance. So literally less than 2 hours ago, I had to drop out of the session. It's a cyberpunk campaign I play with 4 of my friends, one of them being the Dungeon Master. Today, it was supposed to be a session where 3 characters, 1 player character, DM's NPC, and an NPC I created, were on a mission. It was like a in the past, years ago session, when the 3 of them were young, and unfortunately, I just couldn't do it. The DM described that they were all in a helicopter going to their mission when suddenly DM's NPC decided to take off his wing augments, throw them into my NPC's lap, and jump out of the helicopter. The intention being that someone's gonna jump after him since he's not wearing a parachute. But like, why? A player character jumped right after he did, kind of laughing to himself at how crazy the situation was, and then it was my NPC's turn. Since I was in the kitchen making myself something to eat whilst it was someone else's turn, and my kitchen doesn't have the best Wi-Fi, I didn't get what half the scenario was when my player character's turn came up. Plus, it's important to note that I live on a different continent than the rest of my friends, so sometimes Discord cuts out a bit too. So I literally didn't hear what was said and didn't understand what they meant. It was all in good fun, honestly. My friends started kind of roasting me with, well, I guess my player character is going to disappear for a few minutes, and my player character is probably realizing she's looking rather transparent right now. Context being DM's NPC and my NPC are, in the present, married, and my actual player character is their adopted daughter. The DM then explained to me what happened really patiently, and for whatever reason, though, I just froze. In my head, I had an action I wanted to take. Make my NPC grab a parachute, jump off, and try to grab the DM's NPC and, like, put his wings back in place, or hold on to him so he doesn't fall to his death. It's simple, but I just couldn't speak, and my friend's jokes started getting to me, to be honest, so I started crying. I was muted so they couldn't hear me, but I sent a message to the DM apologizing and just telling him I couldn't do this. I feel like I'm being too sensitive and whiny, and at the risk of sounding horribly childish, I just wish they'd stop making these jokes because I was already panicking over being unable to speak to them, so joking about my silence was just overwhelming for me. I feel awful too because my best friend, the player of the actual player character, was excited to have me, as a new NPC, roleplay with him, and I practically threw the job of controlling an NPC to my DM's lap without so much as a warning. Honestly, your DM is probably controlling like 1,000 NPCs, so don't worry about it. Sweet of you to be concerned though, genuinely. Honestly, I feel bad because I don't know what exactly is going on. I'm just freaking out whenever it's my turn, and those jokes, they really did not help. I know they're not making fun of me. They're not directing the jokes at me, but I still can't help but panic and cry, and it's honestly just so embarrassing. I know this isn't much of a horror story, I kinda just wanted to vent a bit, I guess, and I really doubt this will ever be read on TTRPG horror stories, so maybe this is a good place for it. I want to talk about it with my friends, maybe ask them if they'd be able to tone down the jokes for me, because I'm really anxious and insecure, if you can't already tell. Being anxious and insecure, I could never!
Aren't you the guy who cried himself to sleep because you caused your team to wipe in a normal Destiny 2 Vault of Glass run? I felt bad, okay? We were doing the run for so long.
It feels unreasonable for me to even talk about it. It was all in good fun. They didn't mean to make me cry. I don't want to be the problem player that cries whenever something doesn't go their way or complains so much that everyone just wishes they'd shut up already, but I also don't want this to happen anymore because I'm embarrassed of dropping like that. It's the first time I've ever done it. I'm sorry for making this so long and rambling. Honestly, you don't have to read it in the video or anything if it doesn't fit the requirements. I get it, truly. Bro, their only requirement is that there's a lesson to be learned, and there certainly is one here. Like I referenced in the skit, I've cried for stupid reasons countless times. I'll never forget when I was playing the Vault of Glass remake in Destiny 2, and I started crying and puking because I was getting anxiety because I kept messing up and getting the team killed. The raid leader was so sweet about it too, even messaging me the next day to see if I wanted to run it again. And yeah, I felt dumb. Look, our emotions are wibbly and wobbly and hard to understand, and sometimes you're going to have reactions that you feel are stupid. But does that mean you're stupid or a bad person? Hell no. It's completely 100% normal. Talk to your group about this. I've talked to my friends plenty of times about dropping jokes that make me uncomfortable, and they're always happy to do so because they're my friends. I'm sure yours would be happy to do the same for you. This easily happened around 7 or 8 years ago now, when I was a young teenager, maybe like 13. I was desperate to play D&D and unfortunately knew almost nobody who wanted to play, and we were super rural. There was no clubs, so I ended up continuously trying to get my family into it. My parents weren't interested, but tried to play along, and my sister would play, as well as our friends. One day, I found a box of old TTRPG games and a car boot, bought it, and brought it home. It was an Everway game from the mid-90s, which is what would be described as innovative, relying on several decks of vision cards and several other things that were very foreign ideas to people who are familiar with like just D&D and Pathfinder. I struggled, but I didn't have any D&D resources at the time, and with a hell of a lot of homebrew, I managed to get a good foundation to run on that I thought I'd be able to figure out. We organized a big game night in the summer. It was me acting as DM for my sister, our 2 friends, our parents, and our friend's mom, who is our problem player. Not the mom! This is already a very big party for an inexperienced DM, and even though I knew all of them super well, 6 players is still way too many for me, and it was then too. But almost everybody was super patient with me, and it was going really well. Okay, since it seems like your parents are not the problem players, I just want to say now, W parents. Give the parents a round of applause, alright? D&D is not easy to get into, and getting into it for your kid, the main conflict just came from my friend's mom. She was an old school D&D player. I'm talking, been playing D&D and TTRPG since before I was born. And not a single turd would go past without her nitpicking the hell out of every choice I made. Or just asking extremely specific questions about the unfamiliar, very 90s, non-specific fantasy setting. And I would then have to spend a long time reading through a relatively small GM handbook, only to then have to say I don't know the answer or to make something up when she insisted it was very important for her character to know this thing. She would then talk about her longtime DM, who had been running a campaign for literally over a decade, and how it was incredible with his world building, and how he could answer any question about any subject about his world the second you'd ask it, and that it was important for all DMs to be able to do the same thing. Girl, be for real right now.
DM, could you tell me the lore of the vampires in this world? Completely, all of it, right now. Well, in the beginning, the Devil Lord Akka was actually a demon born with a soul, and because of my DM's genius. I just made that shit up.
I was and always have been a writer, but I cannot stress this enough. I was 13 years old. Everway is an interesting game, but the world building is just spectacularly vague. And it was literally my first time DMing a game of that game, and was maybe my third attempt at DMing at all. When we got to the end of the session after 2 hours, they'd made barely any progress because at one point I took a 25-minute break to do some extremely hasty world building on the fly after my friend's mom did something that there was absolutely no precedent for in any of the available handbooks, and she had to have an answer to her problem right then. I can't remember what it was exactly. I just remember whipping something up as fast as I could, presenting it to her after a while, and she just sniffs and makes another comment about how her DM wouldn't have had to pause the game to respond to what she'd done.
The caucasity of this bitch.
I lost all my keen for Everway and for DMing as a whole, and never came for a session 2. And it took years before I felt confident enough to try again. Bro, this woman she's the worst. If I were to ascribe a moral to this, I'd probably advise players who are blessed by DMs with rich inner worlds and encyclopedic knowledge of their settings to have patience. For the ones that don't, this hobby is beautiful. My experience in roleplay in the years since that game have taught me that players have as much responsibility as DMs do when it comes to welcoming new people to our tables and helping them to build confidence as storytellers. Don't be an a-hole. Man, this just sucks. I did compliment the parents earlier, but if I were a dad, which I never will be, but if I were, I feel like I'd say something to this lady because, my God, I don't think this is acceptable. Quizzing a literal child and comparing them to your adult dungeon master is ridiculous. Just horrific. The caucasity of this woman. In-depth world building is awesome, but it shouldn't be used as a gotcha for a DM who's just trying to play the game. World building is like the salt you put on the dish. Too much and it becomes like, really, really salty. That doesn't mean you don't have any world building or little world building. You can have tons of it. Just how you present it to your players matters. This lady probably doesn't actually want a largely unhelpful 20-hour lore dump. She just wants to use it as a gotcha against this literal child, which is awful. Guess what? That's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, then you might enjoy our last episode of RPG Horror Stories, where we talked about an edgelord who went to Reddit for validation. Also, check out our second channel if you want some D&D advice. But before you go, please do leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content when it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. They're just a kid to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.
Please don't break. Oh my God! Keep that in, it'll be a